This is Long Shots, VSiN's premier golf betting podcast. Here's Matt Brown, Wes Reynolds, and Kelley Bydlon.
Hey everybody, welcome in. We have made it the fourth and final major of the 2023 professional golf season. It is the Open Championship as we go across the pond to Royal Liverpool at Hoylake. I'm Ben Wilson, in for Matt Brown. Little housekeeping note, all of Matt's plays up on the website, VSiN.com, and check out in the podcast feed, wherever you get your VSiN podcasts, Matt giving out his full breakdown of the course, his modeling, his top players to go. That is now out as we had a special Monday episode with Matt and Kelley Bydlon, who is here on the desk. Wes Reynolds is here as well. Gentlemen, welcome. Honored to be here. Just happy to be along.
Hey, we're
Glad to have you, Ben.
Yeah.
Hey, I mean, that was a very quick retort of like, hey, he's in, he's here.
Well, maybe we're sick of Matt Brown. Who knows, you know?
Maybe it was an oddly timed vacation for one Matt Brown.
I had to delay my pod recording with him yesterday multiple times. So, yeah.
Okay.
A little inside baseball for you out there.
But, yes, all of Matt's stuff are up. Check out the podcast after you watch the show.
Yes, that is a great suggestion for how to do that. Here on VSiN and the DraftKings Network, as we get into it, guys, we come off of a very entertaining Scottish Open, and after the change was made where now you had this event as a combined PGA Tour and DP World Tour event on CBS, it was more accessible than it has been to most casual golf fans in years past. And how about the storyline where you get Rory McIlroy as the pre-tournament favorite a couple weeks ago, goes out west, birdies his final two holes, and wins the Scottish Open, heading right into Hoylake. Pretty special.
Poor Robert McIntyre, who looked like he was going to get the biggest win of his career. One of our colleagues, Matt Humans, actually had him at 100-1. He was fourth the week before in Denmark. And he was going to win his home Open because McIntyre, of course, is from Scotland. Errant tee shot on 18 and then hits a fairway wood to 4 feet for a birdie to post 14 under. Keep in mind, the winds were gusting as high as like 40 miles an hour throughout that final round. And then McIlroy responds on 18 and stiffs a 2-iron to 10 feet, makes the winning birdie. So Rory McIlroy wins at 15 under. My nearest pursuers were Tommy Fleetwood and Tyrrell Hatton, who never really got going, especially Fleetwood in the final round. Scotty Scheffler, once again, a top 5. I think he's finished top 5 or better in like his last 7 worldwide events. So probably a good bet, and we'll get to that later this week for at least a high finish if you're not betting him outright. But look, very good tournament. Rory McIlroy, by the way, going to try to match Phil Mickelson's feat in 2013, where he won the Scottish Open and the Open Championship back-to-back. He's the only player to ever do that. Rory, of course, the favorite and the previous winner here at Royal Liverpool in 2014.
Yeah. I got to back up my boy Hatton for a second because I've been riding the Hatton train for about a month now, and it's not going to stop this week. That's a little
harbinger of things to come, Kelley.
Spoiler alert right there. But hey, he was in it for a second there, and then blew it in the last few holes.
He did, but when he has a 55-foot putt and he misses it, and then he's like, blank off.
I love it.
It's like, dude, it's a 55-footer. You're mad at that?
See, I love the West. I don't like Jordan Spieth because he whines and complains to the camera. Tyrrell Hatton just gets pissed off, and I love that because is that not all of us on the golf course?
Well, I don't know.
You, but that's me on the golf course.
Tyrrell Hatton is us,
and he doesn't have the luxury of cracking open a beer after he hits that.
Seems like a guy who would love to do that. Why has he not been featured on Full Swing? That's my
He probably doesn't want to because he's probably angry all the time, even practicing.
Man, that'd be one of the best episodes if that ever happened.
Totally agree on that. And as it turns into this week now for the Open Championship, it's interesting. You would think, guys, just because of the public nature of golf betting, circling and right in the vicinity of a major championship, that Rory McIlroy would be getting a ton of play this week. I saw as low at DraftKings as plus 650 after he wins the Scottish Open. But as we sit here and record just after 2 p.m. on the East Coast Tuesday afternoon, McIlroy's actually drifted a little bit in the odds. Even in the last hour, he's drifted from co-favorite now to 8-1. So it is not as low of a price as you were previously forced to pay on a guy in Rory McIlroy just coming off of the win last week, and a guy who won the last time this event was held at Hoylake in 2014, won the Open Championship in 2014. With all that being said, Wes, now at 8-1, he's minus 105 to finish top 10. How are you approaching the McIlroy piece of this heading into this week?
Yeah, and I think it's really not just McIlroy, but the top of the board just in general. Nobody in terms of what is the big three and what has been the big three most of the year, McIlroy, Scheffler, and Rahm. Nobody outright for me, but top tens on a couple of these guys, I think, is probably the way to go, especially on Scotty Scheffler, because take a gander at this form. T3 at the Scottish, T4 at the Travelers, third at the U.S. Open, third at the Memorial, T3 at the Charles Schwab, T2 at the PGA, T5 at the Byron Nelson. Oh, by the way, he's already won 2 events this year, won the Phoenix Open and also the Players Championship. I believe of all of his events, his worst finish in 2023 is T12 at the Genesis Invitational. So, yeah, look, you got to bet him, I think, on top 10. I think there might be a couple places you could still get even money at this point, but that's the way I'm approaching it.
Yeah, DraftKings has gone up to minus 140, by the way, if you're wondering on Scheffler top 10. So
because they're looking at the same things we're looking at, where that run of top five.
JVT asked me this morning, he was like, man, we're getting to a point with that price where it's got to be too expensive, right? And I'm like, well, check back in with me when it doesn't cash. And
because he never gives in either. Even when you think he's out of it, then he'll shoot like a 65 in the final round and rally like he did at the Memorial.
Yeah, going back to Rory real quick. I think Scheffler is by far my top rated golfer this week. I have, even if you wanted to say, I would still look to get in on him probably in tournament. This is still a guy, Wes, I don't know if you agree with this angle or not, but I'm interested to him to a degree, and I'll probably play a couple matchups with him. I haven't finished my complete card yet. But, I think one thing to keep in mind, as great as he's been, he still doesn't have a ton of links golf experience. I don't know if that's going to matter too much or not. Maybe I'm just looking for an excuse not to fire on him pre-tournament. I am interested in getting on him in tournament. Rory, to go back to him real quick, kind of easy scratch off for me this week, not because he just won last week. I know there's always that narrative that you don't want to bet the guy who just won. Right. But just there's golfers at better odds I'm more interested in. I still think that Rory's had some incredibly good putting weeks here recently that I don't know if he'll be able to sustain. Maybe he will, and he'll continue to look good and win this tournament. Some of his accuracy off the tee is a little bit in question.
Great point.
And that I think when we get into our stats and what's important at this course, that was number one for me this week.
This is not like St. Andrews where it's a lot more wide open. You get penalized if you miss fairways here at Royal Liverpool.
And then my final thought on this, if we're still going with the big three, I know Jon Rahm struggled here recently. Wes, I'll tell you, I'm leaving, and when we get to my betting card, you'll see it. I'm leaving room for if this drift continues on Jon Rahm. Jon Rahm is still a world-class player, and in my mind, the second best player in the world, only because of what Scottie Scheffler's done the past few months. This number somehow drifts to 16, 17. I'll be in on Jon.
No, I might even add, and I'm even overexposed on the outright market as it is, but if you look at Rahm, he did miss the cut at the Travelers. Take aside the Players' Championship earlier this March where he withdrew. I think he made like 35 or 36 straight cuts dating back all the way to 2022. So this is not a guy that is playing lousy golf. This is a guy that's the Masters champion, by the way.
That's right.
So let's not forget that. Even though the odds indicate a big two, this is very much a big three, in my opinion.
T10 at the U.S. Open, despite basically having his C-plus stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
We have to consider that. And also, I think it brings up a better point just from the whole field perspective, guys, where you think about the previous few tournaments we had leading into the Open Championship, with the exception of the Scottish Open. You have a lot of guys who are coming off playing the Travelers, tournaments like that, which are extremely different, and it's very hard to look at any results there. Even if you want to look at guys who've had positive recent form, that's good and all. But from the actual course comparison, there's really nothing even remotely close between what we're about to see.
That's another really good point, and we'll get to that in the next segment when we talk about what Kelley and I modeled this week in terms of stats. Keep in mind with your model in terms of your recency biases, 12 rounds, 24 rounds, 36 rounds. There's a lot of those rounds that were John Deere Classic, Travelers Championship, Rocket Mortgage Classic, a lot of Birdie Fest. So you're not exactly getting a true indicator of what the players are going to see this week.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of the big names, at least on the PGA Tour that, like a Jon Rahm, who've played 2-3 tournaments in the past, month and a half, and that's it. So, I really haven't seen a lot of them here recently.
Rahm missed cut at the Travelers, the only tournament he has played on the PGA Tour since that T10 at the U.S. Open. One of the name I wanted to bring up to you guys, he's outside of that big three here, but it is the defending champ. It's Cam Smith, who is fresh off of a win at the Centurion Club just outside London on the Live Tour. Just finished T5 at the U.S. Open, has been in scintillating form most of this year. Comes in with a bit of an odds dip now just over the past couple of days. I saw him as short as 16-1 over the weekend. Now he's 20-1 at DraftKings. How much different, Wes, do you view this task being for him if you compare what we had at St. Andrews last year to what Smith will now try to do at Hoylake in his defense of the title?
Maybe not quite 180 degrees different, but certainly at least close to that. Maybe an obtuse angle mixed in there. But look, Cameron Smith did win 2 weeks ago, and there's something to be said. Winning begets winning. And I was on him last year. I won with him at St. Andrews, but he's not going to have the luxury, and we kind of touched on it with Rory, of being able to hit it all over the place and just be able to recover, which Cameron Smith with his irons and his around the green and his putting is as good as anybody in the game of golf.
Yep.
But if he doesn't keep it in play off the tee, this could go sideways in a hurry. And of those guys and those few top several choices you see on that first page of the odds board on the graphic, he's the guy I'm most concerned about, to be honest with you. Even though his last start was a win, did not play in the Scottish Open, of course, a member of LIV, not eligible to play for the PGA Tour. I believe 10 of the last 12 Open winners did play the week prior, but keep those trends at least in context this week. I don't think that's a requirement.
Completely agree with Wes. Every single golfer that we're looking at on this graphic right now, I would take over Cameron Smith.
Wow.
Ben, I'm glad you brought him up because when we get to my bets, you'll see it. But, I'm taking it a step further this week. Cameron Smith will be a heavy fade for me. Heavy fade. I think the accuracy off the tee with being how important it is, like you just talked about with Rory, Wes, these two guys, and Cameron Smith way more than Rory. There's concerns about that. When we talk about these out-of-bounds areas that are on the course, the rough, the length of rough and the fescue that he might be dealing with, I think it's a good time to fade Cameron Smith this week.
I'm about to use the word harbinger for the second time in 11 minutes, Kelley, because that might be a preview of some of the bets. Speaking of that, if that gives you a little bit of a taste of what this course breakdown will look like, we'll bring it to you in depth right after this with Wes Reynolds' full course breakdown of the Open Championship. We'll also get into our first round leader thoughts, our best bets for the 151st playing of the Open Championship at Royal Liverpool. We have that all still to come right here on Long Shots on VSiN and the DraftKings Network. As we welcome you back, I'm Ben Wilson in for Matt Brown. All of Matt's plays available right now at VSiN.com, and any that he will be adding still to come later this week with Wes Reynolds, with Kelley Bydlon, and it is time for our course breakdown. Royal Liverpool at Hoylake, gentlemen, and this will be, as you said, Wes, maybe not the full 180, but like a 179-degree difference from what we saw at the old course at St. Andrews last year.
Yeah, Royal Liverpool, by the way, it was renovated actually over the last few years by Martin Abear, who also did Royal Portrush, which hosted the 2019 Open. 73.83, so they have lengthened it a little bit. It is a par 71. By the way, the 10th, which was a par 5 back in the 06 and the 14 editions, won by Woods and McIlroy, respectively, that is now a par 4, so it is a par 71. Bent grass fescue on the greens, fescue all in the fairways. The rough is not all that thick, like the traditional rough, about maybe 2.5 inches, but there is about a foot deep fescue in some holes, just about 3 to 10 yards outside the fairway landing areas. Fairways, average width, 32 yards, and that's about average on tour. So they're not totally tight, but they're not wide bombing fairways like you kind of saw at St. Andrews, where you could almost just grip it and rip it anywhere. Out of bounds comes into play on 6 different holes. There's also some deep and penal fairway bunkers that have been repositioned. The greens are relatively flat. Not a lot of contours are in this green or any undulations. 6,500 square feet on average. They're going to roll 10.5 on the stimp. That's pretty much what they do in these links golf courses at the Open Championship. So we're going to probably see a very firm course. There are some changes in terms of the holes. The 15th is now the new 17th hole, a par 3 called Little I, about 135 yards. So it takes its inspiration from the island green, of course, at TPC Sawgrass, even though this isn't really an island green, but it is elevated a little bit here. So that is something new. 2 of the last 4 holes are par 5s at over 600 yards. There are out of bounds lurking, especially on the 18. It is all down the right side of the fairway. So the out of bounds is really close to the fairway. So you will see some out of bounds. They want some excitement, and they're going to get it on these last holes. But in terms of the course layout, 3 par 5s, 2 at 610 or more, 4 par 3s, 3 of them are 195 or more, 11 par 4s, 7 of them are 450 or more. In terms of the course correlations I used, Troon, Muirfield, Carnoustie, Royal Portrush, Royal St. George's, which is part of the Open Rota, and also a little TPC Sawgrass and PGA National is what I use this week. So full course breakdown, that'll be in my column up at VSiN.com later this afternoon.
Yeah, and a couple of things just to add on there. I think the fairway width, first of all, when we talk length with this course, right, Wes, this could vary as we go round to round, depending on what the wind conditions are. This is very much set up for them to either lengthen or shorten it a little bit. You'll have that opportunity. The fairways are interesting to me because you do get about an average width, but you've got a lot of these bunkers that are in that 270 to 300 range, which is going to make driving off the tee interesting, especially with depending on wind. But if there's no wind, you're talking about kind of right in that range where a lot of these big time drivers of the golf ball like to land that tee shot. So I'm interested to see how that comes into play. Also, a couple holes where it's kind of, we get some of that pinched fairway too, right around that area. So that's going to be interesting. And I believe we got the video of it, but on hole 3, you're going to see a lot of these out of bounds areas where they have this wall essentially that comes up, and it's going to look very different from people that are used to PGA Tour, Parkland golf courses. And this is where we're coming up to it right here. So you're going to have to hit straight off the tee and decide whether you carry that little wall on the right, because that is all out of bounds, right of it. So you're going to carry that, give yourself a straighter shot into the green here, or you're going to go left of the wall, make sure you don't go out of bounds, but mess with some of the thicker rough off to the left, and have a more difficult second shot and a longer second shot. These are the choices these guys are going to have to make all week on what looks like relatively a very easy hole. Right. That wall and out of bounds area makes it very difficult, right? Think about that all being water. You might as well just replace that in your mind with water.
Which is why you get some of the TPC Sawgrass comps, even though most people would look at the aerial shots and go, wait, how can you compare those courses? Well, the out of bounds sort of works as a pseudo water type hazard. And these 6 different holes that have these you could call it inland out of bounds, which is very, very weird for us. And I guess it suits the fan that likes to gripe about all the relief that PGA Tours get on the PGA Tour in general. But you aren't going to get that here. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it's right, Wes. It's essentially where they're putting all the hospitality basically in this one area, and that wall's kind of going all around.
Yeah, the third hole is actually normally the opening hole for the members because you have the clubhouse on the left and then the out of bounds all the way down the right hand side, as you explained. And then as you saw on that video, if you're watching us live on VSiN or on DraftKings Network, you see that 90-degree angle where it goes to the right for your second shot into the green, and that's what's going to be interesting here is that are players going to resist the urge like Tiger Woods did? Tiger Woods, I think, hit one driver over 72 holes when he won here in 06 and used 2-iron, pretty much destroyed this course with a 2-iron. So are you going to see his buddy, protege, Rory McIlroy, do the same? We shall see, but you're not going to see as many drivers this week.
Well, and that's why I'm glad you bring that up, because as it gets into some of the things we're looking at, this course, while it has been lengthened, at the same time, depending on the wind and the conditions you get, we might very well see a day or a sequencing of say, early versus late tee times where guys are exclusively using irons off the tee. As far as the weather forecast, always dangerous to just take this as gospel because we're about 36 hours away from the first groups going off bright and early Thursday morning across the pond. But the latest that we have, expecting gusts in that low to mid-20s range at times, all 4 rounds. Mostly sunny Thursday, looking like some morning showers on Friday, and the early forecast calls for light rain Saturday and Sunday. I would assume, Kelley, you like to do this a lot, especially as we get into our first-round leader in the next segment. As we get closer, look at those AM, PM waves, see if the weather is a little bit more indicative of which one of the waves will be more beneficial. Yeah,
look, in this type, I always usually wait until Wednesday night to put my first-round leader bets in. That's not going to change at all with this. If anything, I'll wait even later and as close to the tournament as I can because we know how quickly the weather can change over there. But right now, I mean, Thursday and Friday, at least, are looking relatively calm for what we usually see in this region of the world. So first round leader, it doesn't really look like, or it doesn't really look like there's going to be a huge advantage at one end or the other. So when we do get to that market, I don't think that's something you really have to worry about this week. But yeah, whether, keep your eye on it. You're betting this tournament. If you're betting it every day, adding, some in-tournament matchups or outrights, make sure you're paying attention to what this weather forecast is going to look like. We saw it change in Scotland last week. Expect the same most likely this weekend.
And also one thing that bears pointing out, I know at the risk of overstating the obvious here, if you're not a regular consumer of the Open Championship or links golf in general, there are no trees out there to protect. Right, yes, this is totally exposed to the wind. So if this gets up there like it did last week in Scotland, I don't know if it's going to be quite carnage, But it's going to be fun if you like to see professional golfers and the best players in the world go through some pain.
Tends to happen when we get them out to the Open Championship. Sustained wins projected in that low to mid-teens range. As far as the gust, that will be in the low to mid-20s range. And that leads into some of the modeling and just your guys' general approach. We're getting to your guys' full modeling approaches and then the start of our best bets beginning in the next segment. But because of the fact this is not only a potentially high-variance Open Championship where wind is very, very much an hour-to-hour type thing, but also the fact that you have a combination of players from DP World Tour, PGA Tour, Live Golf. How much are you really going to bank in on the modeling this week? Since I'm certainly someone who is not really going to rely at all on model, much more on feel, and I isolated a couple of individual stats.
It's more context for me. It's not, like the normal boilerplate events where we stick to our models pretty well, but because you have not readily available data, maybe from the DP World Tour or some of the live events, so you get a little bit of a guessing game here. But in terms of what I did, off the tee, it was basically a mix, like a combo platter of distance, accuracy, and fairways gained. Also used approach mainly from 175 to 200, 200 to 225, because when you club down, you're going to have longer second shots. And then around the green, sand saves, a lot of bunkers here, so you're going to want to look at that. Approach putt performance, which is your lag putting. That's something that I think is interesting this week. And then a couple different scoring stats that I did, and then strokes gained total comp courses.
Yeah, it doesn't sound like we're too far off. I know we only got a few minutes here, but I went heavy off the tee, both distance, but especially accuracy this week is what I really looked at. Approach play is going to be important. Around the green play is going to be important. Guess what? Golf's really simple, even in an Open Championship. Just hit it in the fairway, Ben. Hit it onto the green.
Fairways and greens. That's all you got to do.
It's really easy. I mean, come on. How hard to get this speed to bet?
He solved the game of golf. This is the same guy who told me, I'm not playing golf with you. I gave up. Same
That's
Kelley
right.
Bydlon.
I retired.
Because you're beating the hell out of us, Ben.
I don't know about that. We'll get into our full models and as well as some of the first best bets we have. First round leader as well when we return here on VSiN's Long Shots. All of Matt Brown's plays up on our website, vsin.com. Check out him in our podcast feed from the Monday episode he recorded with Kelley. But it is time to get into the rest of our full modeling and the next two segments. We dive into all of our full best bets, full tournament matchups, finishing markets, as well as first round leader. Kelley, just to finish the thought here on your overall modeling, what was the full context here that you decided to include?
Yeah, so again, really heavy off the tee stuff, and that was strokes gained off the tee. I don't know how you lined yours up, Wes, but it was heavy strokes gained off the tee. I looked at good drives gained. I looked at fairways gained. I looked at a little bit of distance, too. I do think accuracy and distance are both important this week, as they kind of always are, but accuracy more over distance this week, as we saw a bunch of those flyovers. You cannot be going way wide of the fairway, like you talked about, Wes. You get either into out-of-bounds areas or some real thick stuff you don't want to be hacking out of. So I think that's real important this week. That's where I set up the base of my modeling approach. We always look at these are bigger than normal greens and what we see on the PGA Tour. I always look at opportunities gained in those situations, Wes. That gives us a birdie op from 15 feet or in. That is a fantasy national stat that I always like to use. Did use a couple of the proximity ranges that you talked about. I think the one thing I would recommend to people out there, if you do your own modeling, be careful with proximity ranges this week a little bit, only because of if the wind does start to affect things. So, like you, I looked at the longer ones because we kind of know those are always going to be in play this week, but I didn't weigh them too heavily. Strokes gained par 5. You got 3 par 5s here. 2 of them are monsters. These are still going to be those 3 holes and the drivable par 4, I think, are still going to be 4 of the more scoreable holes on the course. So that's where I wanted to look at those par 4s, 450 to 500 yards.
I did that as well.
Yeah, we get about 6 to 7 of them. I think there's one that's like 448 yards. So
round up.
Yeah, exactly. Rounding up. And then it's like I did a bunch of scrambling sand saves around the green. I'm assuming wind's going to pick up this week. And if that happens, I think hitting greens is going to be tougher and you're going to be forced to play at least somewhat around the green here. So that's basically what I looked at. I know that sounds like a lot, but heavy emphasis on off the tee play.
And in terms of off the tee, if you don't have access to certain advanced stats, you can use total driving. Yep. I think a little bit. Total driving, by the way, is driving distance plus driving accuracy rank. So that's a way to get to a full context, because I don't think you want to be too biased in terms of distance. And sometimes maybe strokes gained off the tee can be a little bit biased toward the bombers, because they're gaining more with distance than they are with accuracy. So, yeah, you always see like the McIlroys up there, and then the Brian Harmons are up there because they don't gain on accuracy. They don't gain on distance. They gain on accuracy. So that's something you want to put both into context this week.
Absolutely. And I looked at one of the more of the niche strokes gain markets, and that was the off the tee on the positional courses, just to account for shorter positional courses, to account for what we might see where it's not just totally getting rid of the driving, because on those positional courses, you still have driver holes. Just like here at the Open, you might still have driver holes, but depending on the wind, depending on the strategy, might see a lot of long irons as well. And angling
and for
there.
Putting, too, which is probably the toughest thing to model on a week-to-week basis, if you're going to do that, slow greens. Because these are going to be, maybe they call them Velcro, I think at Fantasy National, but something 10 and a half on the stimp meter is what they're going to see this week.
Very good. Okay, I'm glad you mentioned Brian Harmon, because he might be making an appearance on my card in a little bit. But let's start with you, Wes, because Monday show, we had a couple of Kelley's early thoughts. We'll get into Kelley's full card in a little bit. Wes, where did you start shortest guy on your card this week?
Yeah, shortest guy is Viktor Hovland, 22-1, has not missed a cut since last year's Scottish Open. Aside from his win at Memorial, he's got 9 top 20s this year. 4 of them are top 10s. 4th for strokes gained off the tee, 5th for total driving. 4th in the Open last year when he played with McIlroy in the final group, shot 74 on Sunday. So I think he's got that. And I often talk about on our programs on VSiN when we're talking golf, that major championship pain, where you've been kind of close and eventually you kick the door in. And this could be Viktor Hovland this week. But a guy that doesn't have a lot of major championship pain, but certainly has the pedigree to win multiple of them, is Patrick Cantlay, because he hasn't really been right there in the mix, even though you look at the top finishes. I think 14th or better in the last 5 majors. Number 1 in total driving, by the way. I just mentioned that. He keeps the ball in play, and he's got plenty of distance. I think that's going to be vital this week. Ignore that miscut at the Scottish Open. He shot 67 on a Friday, so I think he's well enough in fine form. Colin Morikawa, 35-1. Last time out he played, runner-up in Detroit, losing that playoff to Ricky Fowler. Skipped the Scottish, went to Wimbledon with his wife, and then played some Walton Heath and some Royal Birkdale in preparation. Second on the tour for approach, and his irons are back. Colin Morikawa's approach shots are back, and I think that's going to matter. I don't think he's going to get hurt with the lack of distance off the tee this week. Tony Finau, 66-1. Boy, form doesn't look great coming in when you really look. He hasn't finished better than 32nd in any of his last 5 starts, but this is a buy low spot. I think it's because of the putter has been struggling a little bit, but on slower greens, he historically putts better. He's never finished lower than 28th in any Open. I think the game fits the links golf with the lower ball flight, and that's one of the reasons I did play Jason Day at 110-1, even though his form since winning the Byron Nelson has been very poor. Justin Rose, 77-1. Missed the Open last year because he was not qualified for the Open. That was the first time he missed it in 15 years. I think this is going to be extra special to him. Number 1 on tour in sand save, so he's very tidy around the green. Obviously got back in the winner's circle at Pebble Beach earlier this year. So a lot of the other Englishmen like Hatton and Fleetwood are getting all the love, but he's getting a little bit ignored. I think that was a big drift, as I think it was on Matsuyama too, 80-1. And a lot of that is because Hideki's had some injury concerns. But only one other player, by the way, ranks in the top 10 for strokes gained tee to green in all 3 majors this year, and that was Scotty Scheffler. Hideki's the second one.
I want to focus on him for a second, Wes, because I bet him as well. Only an outright so far, but I might be adding to it. I did not understand this number that we were saying at all.
He should be like 60 or 55.
And I think he's moving that way. When DraftKings reopened odds on Monday, he was 100-1.
Yeah, wow.
100-1.
I know. I did miss that. I was like, that's insane.
And look, I know he's been dealing with this neck injury, but I don't think that there's anything there that you need to be super concerned about, at least this week. We haven't really seen that flare up in a while. And I don't care whether it's his results or where he's showing up on some of our models. He's done very well recently, and in my models, he's like top 15.
Yeah, exactly. So Matsuyama, 80. Adam Scott, 90. 3 top 5s, 5 top 10s in his career at the Open Championship. Missed the cut by 1 last week, but shot 67 on Friday. He was 5th, actually, in 2014 right here at Royal Liverpool, the major that Rory, of course, won. Ricky Fowler was T2. He was number 1 player in the world at that time. He is far from that now, but 90-1 on Adam Scott. One that I did leave off, if I may have buyer's remorse, it might be Xander Schauffele. I considered playing him. God, he really fits here, and I think he's getting ignored by a lot at the top of the market, but you're seeing money on him in the matchup market, which indicates there's some sharp guys that like him. Just 3 matchups so far, and I'll probably add more at VSiN.com/picks throughout the week. Koepka over Cameron Smith, Corey Connors over Ryan Fox, Victor Hovland over Tommy Fleetwood.
There we go. Fun trivia fact. Did you know there are only 2 players who in the previous 2 appearances at Hoylake have finished top 20? One is Adam Scott. The other, Sergio Garcia.
Wow, and he, by the way, who is not in the field.
Who is not in the field. So only Adam Scott is in the field, who has previous multiple top 20s here.
And there's your placements. I mentioned, by the way, the chalk in the top 10, McIlroy, Scheffler, Cantlay, Hovland, Schauffele, top 20. Xander's a top 20 cash machine. Finau and Rose, top 30. Taylor Gooch and Adam Scott, top 40. I will probably have a few more. Okay. Just that's all I could get in as of this morning.
All right. I like that you brought up Taylor Gooch. He is someone who I will have some thoughts on when we come out of the other end of the break. But Kelley, there were a couple guys too that you had circled when the numbers first came out.
Matt and Wes this week, it's not even funny.
Matt Brown and Wes Reynolds have mentioned both of those guys. Would you care to explain in the last 45 seconds?
Yeah. So once we get my card, I'll explain it, how I've got things set up and how I'm planning to attack things over the next couple days.
Poor Kelley.
But there's one outright I'm planning on adding, and I've been down between 2 guys, Ben, and I've just been battling around in my brain which one I want to go with, because I don't really want to add both. They're kind of in those medium odds. So I do the pod last night with Matt, and no help there because, of course, he's bet both of them. And then I get to do the show with Wes, and he's bet both of them. So Victor Hovland, Collin Morikawa, I'm adding one of them, but I don't know which one yet.
You know, there's an old saying that goes something like, what the hell, it's just money. So.
It's only money.
Something like that. We'll go through the rest of Kelley Bydlon's best bets for the Open Championship. I'll have my plays as well as we wrap up this edition of VSiN's Long Shots. Wes Reynolds here, Kelley Bydlon here. We just ran through all of Wes Reynolds' plays. Matt Brown's plays are on our Monday podcast episode in your VSiN podcast feed, as well as on VSiN.com. And without further ado, Kelley, Let's roll. He said he had multiple guys that he was fretting over. How many ended up making the card here?
Let's hit it. Okay, so what we got so far, the top 2 on this card are bets that I put in multiple weeks ago, probably about a month ago. I've been on the Tyrrell Hatton train for a while now, not backing down here this weekend, that's for sure. Made that bet 33-1. This is probably about a month, 5 weeks ago. And I'd still tip him this week. I think you can find him. What's best number you see him, Wes? Like 26, 27 to 1, something like that?
Yeah, still in the mid-20s.
Yeah.
25 at DK right now.
I love Tyrrell Hatton. I would still love him this week. I would still play that. Patrick Cantlay, I'm glad I got this ticket in when I did, Wes. That missed cut last week did concern me a little bit.
I missed. There were 30s available and even a little bit higher.
20 now, market wide.
Yeah, so I don't know, but all I have him in is the outright market right now. I think that's probably all I'm going to stay. Regardless, though, of what people want to say about Cantlay and majors and however you might view him this week, he is second in every single model I ran this week behind Scottie Scheffler. It's not Rory, it's not Jon Rahm, it's Patrick Cantlay. And like you talked about, Wes, what does he do extremely well, especially this year? He is long and accurate off the tee. One of them, and if we think that's the most important thing in this course to win the Open, that I can't really argue with the stats of what he's done all season long in those categories. He's been one of the best on tour. So that's where my first outright is, but made that a little while ago. Hatton, I am very, very high on. Look, this is a guy he's top 15-ish in all my models, but the game just fits this course so well. What is he? He's accurate off the tee. Solid scrambling. Solid around the green play. He's a top 20 approach player on the tour. He fits everything that I'm looking for at this course. So really love him this week. Played him a top 20. Played him in a matchup as well. So it might even be adding more to him at this point. Don't know. This is where I want to circle it back real quick. I will be adding one of the following 3 guys. I'm keeping my eye on this Jon Rahm drift. Ben's laughing over here, but I'm keeping my eye on this Jon Rahm drift, because if we get to a 16, 17, I'm praying for 16. We get to 16-1, though, I'm in on Jon Rahm, and that will be the end of my outright card. If not, I will probably be adding I see 13-1 at DraftKings right now on Jon Rahm, but there is, I know I saw 14s. I even saw like a 14 plus 1450 out there yesterday. So keep your eye on that if you are interested in Rahm. Otherwise, I will be pivoting and going Victor Hovland or Collin Morikawa. Both of them, I really like here, Wes. I know you do. I know Matt does. I think both of them, though, that still have a little bit of concerns in their game. Does Morikawa, like you said, his irons are back, right? But is the distance going to be good enough? Is the putting going to be good enough for this week if he's got a battle to the wind? I'm not sure, but I still really like him. Victor Hovland, guy we know is great off the tee. We know he's a great ball striker. Is some of the around the green stuff going to trip him up? He has been getting better in those areas, but is it good enough to go out there and win an Open Championship? I'm not sure, but I'm going to be in on one of those guys. I still really like him this week. If we go over to my top 20 plays, I did Hatton, Tommy Fleetwood. Heavy on those guys. I'm not betting the Tommy Fleetwood outright. I think this field is too congested, too many good players in this field. Tommy Fleetwood doesn't win enough in America, at least. I know we're not in America here this week, but I'm not gonna play him on an outright, but played him top 20 this week. Other guy I'm very high on this week that you've heard me high on before. If you
I'm stunned to hear you say this name.
Siwoo Kim. My man, Siwoo Kim.
That's a guy I might use in like a top 30 or top 40. Siwoo, by the way, winner at TPC Sawgrass, the Players. That's more of a sneaky course correlation that people will overlook. And I think Siwoo could actually play very well. I was surprised at how frequently he was popping in my stats.
Yep, top 16, all my models. I mean, look, when it comes to Siwoo, it's basically, can he putt well? Well, slower greens are going to probably help him out. He's had miscut the Travelers, but T39 U.S. Open, 4th at the Memorial, T29 at the Charles Schwab. This guy, he does have a game. What does he do off the tee, Wes? He's not very long, but he's extremely accurate.
Yes.
And I think if you're going with guys that are not long off the tee this week, they have to have very good long iron play. So that is Colin Morikawa. That would be a Hideki Matsuyama. That would be a Siwoo Kim, right? All of those guys, they might not be the longest off the tee, but they're very good with their long iron. So you got to find that distance one way or the other, and that's where I'm going with Siwoo. So those are my top 20 plays. I don't think I'll be adding much there. Tournament matchups, here's what I have so far. Tyrrell Hatton, minus 130 over Cameron Smith. I'm on a heavy Cameron Smith fade this week. I know Matt Brown is as well. Siwoo Kim, I bet over Sahith Theegala. Siwoo Kim, I bet over Adrian Meronk, both in matchups there. And then one prop or a top 20 just on the no side. Cameron Smith not to finish top 20, minus 110. Love that we get some of these Vegas shops that post the yes-no options on this.
You also added Joaquin Niemann, correct? End of your card?
Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't get to my two long shots. Yeah, Siwoo and then Joaquin Niemann, 150 to 1. Look, I got a little bit of a Joaquin Niemann problem. I like the guy's game. He's one of those guys that I was crushed when he went to live.
I was too, because I hit him at the Genesis last year. And I was like, I want to bet on him more.
Me too. But Wes, what did we talk about with Tony Finau? Same thing. This guy's got a low ball flight. We're concerned about the winds. That could really help him. Who's a guy that distance already is one of his benefits. One of the things he does best at. So if it gets windy out there and he can take advantage of this low ball flight, get some further distance over the rest of the field, that could really help him out. 150 to 1. He's a live player. I trust my modeling, my stats pretty heavily. I'm not going to do anything with him outside of an outright, but I think he's a good long shot play this week.
And we've perennially seen the live players, because they're not in the public eye as much. It seems like just, in general, their odds have drifted. And we talked Joaquin Niemann. I bet him at the U.S. Open just to make the cut. He was minus 140, and I'm going, wait, that's a guy who should be like, in the 200 to 1 range, who's a near pick him to make the cut.
Everybody else has drifted up, I think, except for like Smith, Brooks, and DJ a little bit. DJ's gotten a lot of early respect in the market.
Sure. Yeah, he has. And I know some guys I respect that are on DJ this week. I think I was talking to Cian Ajad about this morning. I think it's really interesting when you look at what the betting markets have done with these live golfers. Because what did we see with Brooks Koepka when he was heading into the Masters? I had a 99 to 1 ticket on the guy, right? He finishes top 5. What are his odds set for the PGA? 15 to 1, 18 to 1. That was the range that he's in. Okay, then we get through the summer, not top of mind as much. He's playing over on Live Tour, and you can get 22, 25 to 1 on him.
I think the price, and I almost played Brooks. I think the price is very fair on Brooks this week.
Yeah.
Very fair.
Well, you guys didn't play him, but I did. That's
you
my,
did. Yeah,
that's
get
my,
your bets.
That's my one.
I've got him in matchups and probably a placement, but...
Betty in the bets.
Betty in the bets.
There you go. I'm usually the one that does the singing on these programs.
I know you usually are. When I saw Brooks Koepka get 24 to 1 at Circa, I couldn't help myself. That is the one outright. And I'm usually someone who more often attacks the placement markets. I'm not a huge outright betting guy, but I did place a bet on Brooks Koepka, who has finished top 10 4 times out of his 7 Open appearances since 2014, 6th in the overall field in strokes gained on links courses. He's also top 10 in driving off the tee on those shorter positional courses. So even though we think of him as a bomber, he also has been very apt strategically. And just think about his ball flight: low, straight, penetrating. That should really correlate nicely to this course. I also added him. You can find plus 105 on him in certain markets. I played that at stations in Las Vegas on Koepka top 20. Also added a couple other top 20. Shane Lowry at plus 140. I really wanted one guy in my card, guys, who's just a traditional, overall, really, really solid links player, former champion at the Open in 2019.
Winner at Royal Portrush, and if the weather gets gnarly, Shane Lowry is the guy you want to have.
Yeah, definitely accounting for some of that potential. He also finished 9th when the Open was back at Royal Liverpool in 2014. Top 21 in his last 3 Opens, and is also in really good form. 5 times out of his last 6 events, he's finished in the top 20 overall, including all 3 majors this year. Added Taylor Gooch, a guy who there might not be much on the number side, guys, to base this off of, plus 260 to finish top 20, but he's won 3 times on LIV this year. Yep. Before he left for LIV, his final year on the PGA Tour, he was top 10 in par 5 scoring.
And he's got something to prove, too, because he seems like he's not being considered much for the Ryder Cup, but are there 12 Americans playing better than him right now? I don't know.
And he's been top 30 in each of his last 2 Opens. So there's not been a ton of history, but there has been at least enough anecdotally to like Taylor Gooch. And then I added the lefty Brian Harman, plus 125, top 40, who is another one of those guys, pops on the off the tee short positional courses, has been top 20 each of the last 2 Open Championships, and finished T26 back in 2014. So kind of a sneaky guy who's in the 100 and plus longer range that I do like this week. That's the card. And let's go, gentlemen.
Who's going to be the champion golfer of the year?
It's going to be Tyrrell Hatton. And you can't
I'm going to say Victor
Hovland
Hovland based on that shirt he's going to wear. That's a confident man this week.
For Wes Reynolds, for Kelley Bydlon, I'm Ben Wilson. Thanking you for watching this edition of Long Shots on VSiN and the DraftKings Network. On VSiN, stay tuned for Sharp Money. And for those on the DraftKings Network, Ross Tucker is coming up next.
Go to VSiN.com/subscribe to become a VSiN Pro subscriber today.